join Carol Davies on globalvoiceradio, the host of Only the Best for You. Be a changemaker and unlock the secret to your best life.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the show Only the Best for You here on Global Voice Radio. My name is Carol Davies of Passion Motivator Coaching. I'm so pleased to share with you the best information and speakers about how you can be a change maker to make the world and yourself the best you can be. Today, I want to discuss how you can use fear in a positive way to grow both emotionally and spiritually. The biggest block that holds most people back is fear. It can keep you from taking action when the time is right. And if that happens, we miss out on having the kind of love, health, money, and success we want. It's our sense of fear that derails success more often than actual failed attempts at success. So what exactly is fear? You may not even recognize it as such. You may even deny that you ever experienced fear. But if you get a feeling of anxiety and apprehension when an object or situation comes up, then you're demonstrating fear. Fear is an emotion that arises from perception that something is harmful. It is a self-preservation device wired into our brains. This is why we feel nervousness, panic, and exhilaration coming in a sudden rush in moments of fear. Fear comes in many forms, not all of which are motivated by the need to protect yourself. Sometimes the source of fear could be perceived as irrational by some, although for the one experiencing it, it may seem perfectly logical. Nevertheless, the more people understand the kinds of fear they experience, the better they are equipped at addressing them. If we look at the concept of fear, we can see that fear is actually the foundation of everything. Fear can be seen as an acronym for false evidence appearing real, FEAR. There's no true threat of immediate physical danger, no threat of a loss of someone or something dear to us, actually nothing there at all. Fear is an illusion, something we fabricate in our own minds and pretend is real. It's not uncommon for adults to be undergoing feelings of anxiety and apprehension over things and or situations that are attached to traumatic and fearful experiences from childhood. In fact, it is during childhood where lasting attitudes and perceptions about things and situations are largely formed. And these perceptions and attitudes can be carried well into adulthood. However, these attitudes may not necessarily be positive to your ability to function fully and productively as an adult. In fact, it may actually impede you. It is therefore important to recognize the possible sources of things you fear, even if it means going back to reassess one's childhood. Many experts agree that for as long as these issues remain unresolved, the fear one experiences now will never truly be addressed, and so keeps a person from realizing his full potential. However, it is often easier said than done. It is actually easier to attribute a source of fear to something that exists and makes sense now, rather than admitting a childish fear. Nevertheless, this initial embarrassment has to be overcome in order to get to the root of one's fears. The process of recognition, confrontation, reconciliation, and separation needs to be experienced for the fears to be truly resolved. For example, feelings of excessive anxiety, if not anger, over people who do not show up at an appointed time may have taken root from a childhood experience. It may be possible that at one time as a child, someone had a promise to arrive at a given time. The child may have put so much weight in that person's arrival that when the appointed time came, it delivered a crushing blow of disappointment and abandonment, feelings that could be carried over well into adulthood. Another situation of a childhood fear manifesting itself in adult may be the fear of confrontation. It is likely that an individual who avoids conflict to a fault does so because of traumatic associations with confrontation. For example, this person as a child could have been witness to several arguments between adults, possibly his parents, which could have escalated into physical injury or one of the parties, if not himself as well. Much as this person, now an adult, would want to forget this experience, he or she may recall it unconsciously every time the possibility of a conflict comes up. So fear can be very deeply rooted so that you don't even know what is possibly causing the feelings of fear and anxiety. Addressing a fear is simply the acknowledgement that the fear exists instead of denying it. By affirming it, the person gains a tangible, something he can hold on to, foothold on his fears. This in itself is a big step. Once that first step is made, a specific response can be solicited. In the case of the abandoned child, the adult can acknowledge the fear by specifically mentioning what happened and how he felt at the time. The next step comes in reconciliation and separation. This is where the adult establishes that how he or she felt in the past regarding the things that were feared remain in the past. While he or she reconciles the fact that the child and him or herself are the same person, he or she as an adult can choose to react differently to those fears. For example, to no longer be afraid. The duration for such a process varies with each person. For some, the aid of a therapist is not totally necessary. Nevertheless, all are positive steps towards making one less afraid of what is out there, allowing one to be a person ready to realize his or her full potential. Now, the funny thing is, fear isn't real. Fear is being out of balance. And we really manufacture our own fears. It's not unusual for clients to call me and after giving me a rundown on their fear issues, asking, "Can you help me get rid of my fears?" My usual response is, I can help you recognize what you fear and then help you design strategies to put your fears in perspective and then decide which ones you want to tackle. Now, one of the worst things about fear is that when we're experiencing it, the effects of it can paralyze and destroy our ability to rationally process our experience in the moment. Now, what if there was a system that could easily be memorized to reduce the impact of fear every time it appears? Mnemonics or memory aids often serve as useful tools to help us in moments where memory might fail. In the case of fear, as I mentioned before, a popular acronym is false evidence appearing real, FEAR. While this acronym is useful in reminding us that fear is often based upon a misperception, it unfortunately doesn't teach us how to reduce fear. So what about employing new acronyms which incorporate research tools for fear reduction? There are two One is called the fear system, and the other is called the LMONP cycle, which are two examples I'm going to talk about. Now, the first one I mentioned is the FEAR system. That stands for focus, expose, approach, rehearse. With F, focus, you focus instead of freaking out. E, you expose instead of escape. A, you approach instead of avoiding. And R, you rehearse a lot. Let's break this down and look at it a little more closely. For the F, focus, researchers have found that mindfulness-based cognitive therapy can help us reduce our fear and anxiety through redirecting our focus. Rather than focusing upon the fear, which is often a future focus, focusing on the present can help you relax. Practicing skills such as body scanning, mindful movement, sitting meditation practices, and breathing exercises will help you reduce anxiety and become more present focused. There was a very good study in 2011 by McManus et al. That stated that experimenting with purposeful focus on the here and now helped people to reduce health anxiety. Now, E, expose. You expose instead of escape. One of the hallmarks of anxiety is the tendency to avoid what Dr. Albert Ellis called discomfort anxiety and ego anxiety. Rather than facing their fears of being uncomfortable by tolerating discomfort, or facing their fears of social disapproval or rejection by tolerating situations in which this might occur, people with anxiety tend to escape such anxiety provocation. Now, in contrast, what behaviors refer to as exposure hierarchies provide an opportunity to break down a feared task into smaller, more manageable steps. For example, if you have a fear of public speaking, you could start small by rehearsing your speech to yourself. The next step might be rehearsing it in front of one person. Gradually, you could increase the number of people you speak to until you are speaking to a group of people without anxiety. Psychological treatment using exposure hierarchies often encourages people to remain on the lowest hierarchy step until completion of the step leads to minimal or no anxiety. When completion of the lowest step becomes easy, the individual completing the hierarchy can then move to the next step, like advancing to the next level in a computer game once mastery of the lower level is achieved. So in this way, in a slow, steady progression, you can go up different steps until the source of the fear and the anxiety is basically eliminated. Now, here is A, approach. Approach tasks instead of avoiding them. Another hallmark of anxiety is the tendency to avoid tasks which are seen as difficult or challenging. In rational emotive behavior therapy, REBT, Dr. Ellis talked about striving for high frustration tolerance, doing that which leads to longer-term satisfaction over low frustration tolerance, doing that which is expeditious in creating comfort, but ultimately sacrifices long-term satisfaction. Approaching a task doesn't have to be done in a large-scale fashion. For example, if you were initially scared to climb a mountain, your first approach in this direction might simply be to learn more about the skills that are required to be successful. In addition, you can take an even smaller step. Approach the situation mentally. Researchers have shown that process simulation, the act of mentally imagining taking steps to complete a goal, can also effectively reduce your anxiety. Now, the last letter is R for rehearse. Rehearsal involves practicing a behavioral skill in a repeated fashion until mastery is attained. Actors, speakers, athletes, musicians, singers, dancers, skaters, and other performers understand that practicing frequently, often and well, is essential to a great performance. So if you have a performance-related fear, experiment with practicing to the point of greater skill. Because practice is active and allows you to achieve greater mastery, it may serve to reduce fear and increases the likelihood of a successful performance outcome. In addition, practice may lead to disconfirmation of the feared consequence. For example, you may think that you can't do something, but practice teaches you otherwise. Behaviorists refer to overcorrection, which is when a new skill is practiced repeatedly until it becomes almost a habit and very easy to do. Now, there's another interesting set of techniques I'd like to mention to you called the LMNOP cycle. It stands for L is label and language, M is the meaning that led to the emotion, N, it's not you, it's your brain, O is opt for a new meaning. The system was created by a first-hand specialist in managing fear, K. Nanavati. Nanavati is an infantry Marines veteran who served as a team leader during the war in Iraq and had other lives in his hands on a regular basis. He often had to face his own fear, as well as the fears of those who turned to him. Nanavati currently uses these lessons in his work as a certified life coach and a professional explorer. Nanavati has practiced mastery of his own fear through cave diving, climbing mountains in the Himalayas, jumping out of airplanes, among other things. From his life experience and research in neuroscience and psychology, Nanavati created the LMOP cycle to help you overcome fear. L is label and language. To change a bad habit and reduce the impact of fear or any disempowering emotion, start by labeling the emotion you're experiencing. Dr. Matthew Lieberman, a psychology professor at UCLA, has shown that the simple act of labeling an emotion reduces activity in the amygdala, the part of the brain associated with fear, and the limbic system, the part of your brain that controls emotions, and increases activity in an area in the prefrontal cortex associated with processing emotions. This part of the brain essentially has a step outside of the impact of our emotions to consciously process it and in turn choose where we direct our actions. The next step is to immediately change your language and adopt what social psychologist Amy Cuddy refers to as the power pose. Here's what you do. Stand tall, open your body into an expansive position, and act as if you are the most confident person in the world. Changing your body language into this powerful position reduces the stress hormone cortisol and increases testosterone in your body. Just as our minds control our bodies, the system works the other way as well. So the next letter is M for meaning. What is the meaning that led to the emotion? So the next step is to ask yourself what meaning you've assigned to the experience that led to your emotion. The work of Dr. Michael Gazzaniga, a psychology professor at the University of California at Santa Barbara, has demonstrated our natural tendency to search for meanings to attach to events. Even when there is no inherent meaning in an event, our brains will create one. As Dr. Albert Ellis taught us early in his career, it is the belief we attach to our experience, not the experience itself, that determines how we act and feel. Because experiences of life don't always have inherent meaning, cognitive psychologists teach that we assign meaning to our experiences. Our assigned meanings shape our experience of life. Psychiatrist Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, tells a story of how he was able to survive the torture of life in a concentration camp through holding on to an empowering meaning which helped him persevere. The next letter, N, it's not you, it's your brain. Neuroscientist Dr. Benjamin Libet has discovered that we do not control what first shows up in our minds. Based upon conditioning and implicit memory, our brains control the initial direction of our attention, usually without our conscious approval. The key in this step is to remind yourself that what you are experiencing is not you. This is not who you are. It is just your brain stuck in an old pattern. By doing this, you further separate yourself from the impact of the emotion that is not serving you and allow yourself to not be defined by it any longer. The next letter is O, opt for a new meaning. Deep down, your subconscious brain will not believe the new meaning you choose for the experience. It initially won't because it is still stuck in its old patterns. Nonetheless, you can choose a new meaning anyways. Dr. Ellis talked about creating a cognitive coping self-statement, which is a phrase that summarizes this new meaning for you. This, combined with the next step, creates new neurological pathways in your brain. The last letter, P, purpose and preemptive strikes. Choose something else in line with your higher purpose and circle back with preemptive strikes. In Dr. Jeffrey Schwartz's book, You Are Not Your Brain, he references two principles based on neuroscience that allow us to literally alter our brain's hardwiring: the quantum Zeno effect and Hebb's law. The quantum Zeno effect states that consciously focused attention activates, stabilizes, and holds together brain circuits in order for Hebb's law to take effect. Hebb's law states that neurons that fire together wire together. What this means is that by directing your attention to something other than the old pattern you are stuck in, either in the form of action or focused thought, you create new neural pathways in your brain. The work of psychologists Peter Gollwitzer and Veronica Brand-Statter suggests that by noting down ahead of time a detailed plan for when and where you will engage in a very specific action, you can as much as triple your success in actually accomplishing that action. So to prevent yourself from getting stuck in a pattern that you know is common for you, or even to ensure that you take a desired action, use preemptive strikes. Write down exactly what you will do and how you will do it, when a potential obstacle presents itself. This preemptively prepares you for this obstacle that you know will occur and prepares you for the next time you might need to use the LMNOP cycle again. Deeply ingrained neurological pathways will not change overnight, but by using the LMNOP cycle regularly, in time, you will be able to create new pathways that better serve you in your everyday life. So, why does fear immobilize us? Here's a very famous quote. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Nameless, unreasoning, unjustified terror, which paralyzes needed efforts to convert retreat into advance. This is a famous quote by the late President Franklin D. Roosevelt on his first inaugural address on March 4, 1933. As the quote implies, fears are unjustified and can paralyze our efforts to advance in our lives. But what are fears? Why can it be so powerful to stop us from doing certain things? Fears are known to be unreasonable ideas of certain objects, events, places, or feelings. Because of its irrational being, it can also be considered as a person's weakness. That's why most people don't talk about them, much less admit that they have those fears. We can get used to living with our fears and be unconscious of them. Fear can also be a good thing. It can lead us to safety and keep us or a loved one from danger. Some fears give us signals that there is a threat or we are facing danger. We listen to these fears for us to respond correctly for our own good. However, most of the fears that we have are irrational, especially our being afraid of particular things or situations. These are the fears that can ruin our day, restrict us from enjoying our everyday activities. Sometimes we call this type of fear phobia. A person afraid of flying could mean he might be missing out a promotion at work. That is already passing on a great opportunity just because the person could not face his fear of flying. And how sad could that be? So, in conclusion, I'd like to reference the famous classic book on fear, published by the renowned author Susan Jeffers. It's called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyways. I highly recommend reading this classic book as it has many dynamic techniques for turning fear, indecision, and anger into power, action, and love. In this wonderful book, you'll discover what we are afraid of and why, how to move from victim to creator, the secret of making no-lose decisions, a vital 10-step process that helps you out-talk the negative chatterbox in your brain, and how to create more meaning in your life, among other things. So, Dr. Jeffers shows you with insight and humor how to become powerful in the face of your fears and enjoy the elation of living a creative, joyous, loving life. Thanks so much for listening today. I surely do hope that some of what you have heard today will help you become what you are capable of becoming. We deserve to have the best life we can design and make happen. Go for your dream. You can do it. You can get rid of your fears. If I can help with further information or answer any questions you have about working with your fears, contact me, Carol Davies, the Passion Motivator, at my website, www.thepassionmotivator.com, or by email at coachcaroldavies That's COACHCAROLDAVIES @gmail.com. I would be more than happy to send you more tips on dealing with your fears or schedule a time to have a talk with you. Just ask. Remember, making changes in your life is something you can do. Tune in next week for more tips on how you can have your best life. Bye now.
Tune in every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern for Only the Best for You with Carol Davies on Global Voice Radio.